This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Welcome to Wandering Grey Bruce. I'm your host, Krista McKee. Today we're going to talk about birds. I think a lot of us had a change of lifestyle when COVID shut everything down, and we started to take notice on what was in our backyard. And when I started looking into it, I had a lot of different bird species coming into my backyard, and I found out that there is just under 500 different species that fly through Ontario. And if you start looking on web pages and Facebook, I very quickly became addicted to the Untitled Field Naturalist Facebook page. And I come across a couple that was posting tons of different photos of pictures of pictures of birds in their backyard. So today we're visiting that backyard of Dave and Renee Anderson. So thank you for allowing us to be here.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad you could make it.
Yeah, he has a fabulous spot here. The amount of birds that are chirping in the background, the mics probably can't pick that up. But you have been keeping track of the birds that have flown through your place, which is interesting.
Yes, long before COVID. It's just a hobby. One of the fellows at work introduced me to it quite a number of years ago, and ever since we've been studying the birds and finding out how many birds come through in the springtime and when they arrive in the springtime. And this year, so far, we've had 49 species of birds.
Wow.
At the farm or through the farm at one point in time or another.
Amazing. I know a lot of people get excited when they see their first robin, right?
Exactly.
Everyone is always wanting to be the first one to say, I've seen a robin. It's, spring is here. But there's so much more to it than just the first robin coming through.
Exactly, yeah. There's so many species, and we found living here on the farm that one of the most predictable species is actually the bobolink. And we know that it's going to be back around May the 5th or 6th or 7th, one of those 3 days, and invariably through the 20 some odd years that we've lived here, the bobolinks arrive at that time.
Amazing,
yeah. How
they've got a calendar. And I'm the same way with hummingbirds. I have to admit, May long weekend, the hummingbirds always come just either a couple days before or a couple days after. So that's what I always look for.
So you put your feeders up in advance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you know they're coming. And then the orioles always fall a little bit later. I can't remember off the calendar, but it's usually...
I'd have to look on our spreadsheet. We keep it all in the computer. It's all on spreadsheet now from one year to the next.
That's amazing. So what is your favorite bird then?
Oh gosh. One of the favorites is one that doesn't visit very often, and that's an Indigo Bunting. And we see those come through occasionally, very occasionally.
Now an Indigo Bunting, just explain to our viewers what an Indigo Bunting is, because they are spectacular.
Well, it's just a small little bird that is very, very bright in color. And it doesn't stay in one place very long. It's flitting here, there, and everywhere. Very pretty blue, a dark, dark blue.
Very
indigo.
Blue, yeah. And I was very fortunate to see one this year, and that's the first. It was the first for me, and I was very excited. So by the time I was able to get a picture of it, and then I had to go look it up in a book because I thought I had the number one rarest bird in the world right in my backyard, and found out that it does fly through. They are rare to see, but they are here, and a lot of people don't realize what's in their backyard until you take the time out to start looking.
Yes.
Yeah. Amazing. So you have 49 different species. Now, do you have kind of an estimate on what would stay here and what goes through? Yeah,
on a regular basis throughout the summer, we have about 20 species that we can see here. Not all 20 of them come to the feeders, of course. We probably have 10 to 15 that come to the feeders, and the rest, they just enjoy the environment that we have around here on the farm. Since we've been here on the farm, we've planted some 200 2,000 trees.
Wow.
So it's changed a lot since we moved here, and so now we find that we do get a bigger variety and a better variety of birds that actually stay the whole summer through.
Nice, very nice. And that's another key thing is creating a habitat
Yes.
for the birds is a big thing. And then when you place your feeders, another thing is location, 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 right?
Yep.
Because you want them to be accessible.
They have to be accessible to the birds, but the birds also have to feel comfortable coming to them. So most of our feeders, as you can see, they're near either shrubs or dead branches, because birds often like to sit on a dead branch and kind of look the place over before they come into the feeder.
Right.
And we keep most of the feeders in close to the trees so that they can just fly up into the trees and be protected if need be, because we have the odd hawk around that does feed on songbirds. So
Yeah.
it's all part of nature.
Yeah, definitely. Now, if for someone that was wanting to attract birds in, what do you find is the best feed to put out for
Well,
them?
one of the best all-around ones, I believe, is sunflower seeds, and that's in the shell. There's so many birds that can eat the sunflower seeds, right from chickadees and nuthatches on up to your blue jays. They all seem to be able to handle sunflower seeds. And Bayshore Feeds in town has a good supply, as does TSC in town.
Yeah.
So there's lots of in-town suppliers that can provide you with good quality feed for the birds.
Yeah, yeah. Which, yeah, very accessible. Something else that I've noticed that is here is the oranges. That,
Yep.
And you don't have to have special high gizmo feeders. Your wife has just gently set them along the rail fence here on a nail.
Yep, that's her thing. She likes to feed the orioles, but there's a lot more birds we found that like oranges than just the orioles. The robins come, woodpeckers come to them, so there's quite a number of different bird species that come to the oranges. And what we do is, when we go to the grocery store, we look on the discount part of the produce section.
Yep.
And lots of times there'll be a bag of oranges there or something, and that's what she picks up in order to feed them.
Definitely, because once you set them out, they're going to mold anyway.
Yep.
So you don't need to be spending
Yep.
a whole lot of money buying your produce. Because, yeah, I even started putting oranges out at my house, I have to admit. And I had this really weird bird that was gray and kind of had this mohawky type dark spot on the top, and yes, I had to go to the book to figure it out. But I had a catbird. I didn't even know a catbird existed,
Yeah.
you know, but it loves the oranges.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
I was absolutely surprised, and the jam. So I
Yes.
do put out a little bit of jam.
yes. Grape jelly is another thing that we put out to attract the orioles particularly, but there's a variety of bird species that like them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so right now it's baby season, and that is a unique thing in itself, to watch how the parents nurture the young. You've been watching, I think, orioles right now are starting
Yes,
to come out.
the orioles have been pretty busy, as has the rose-breasted grosbeak and the red-bellied woodpecker. And we're actually got a little woodpecker just flew into the tree behind you there. I don't know
Nice.
whether he's going to come down to the food or not, but yeah, it's surprising how some of the species deal. Like when the young hatch, of course, there's a lot of activity with the adults coming and getting seeds and taking them away back to the nest or whatever, whether it's oranges or jelly or whatever. So they're very, very busy. So something's going on because they're there more frequently than they normally are.
Right.
If you have time to watch your feeders, and so then it's usually not too much longer than that. Then they finally bring the young ones to the feeders, and they're trying to teach the young ones how to feed properly. So it is quite exciting. It's quite interesting. It's nice to see the young birds learning all about where to get some food and how to get it open and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's the part that simply amazes me, because I've been fortunate enough to see the orioles come back to the feeder, and it's funny how they're telling the parents, and the parents rush over and they're dropping food into their mouth, and it's really quite amazing to to watch.
Yes, yeah. And the other thing that we found very interesting is that it's not always both parents that are involved in rearing of the young. Sometimes it's just the dad, the male parent, that's involved in feeding and looking after the young ones, and the mom's off. She's laid some more eggs and she's setting more eggs in the meantime, and that's particularly true for species like robins.
Exactly, and a lot of people don't realize that robins can have up to three broods.
Three
broods, and a brood is a family. Is a family of robins, and that's a lot of work.
It is, but that's how they've managed to survive and do so well.
Yeah, exactly. Now, do you think, I was told that chickadees, they nest really early, but some people put out birdhouses. I noticed here that you have quite a few birdhouses.
Yes.
Do you know what species that you've got in nesting in them?
In the birdhouses, we typically have tree swallows, bluebirds, chickadees, and wrens. So all 4 species will use the same design of birdhouse.
Oh, no, that's interesting.
Yeah, and if you make the hole just a little bit too large, so an 1.5-inch hole is the size that you want. If you make it a little bit too large, then you'll get things like starlings. And of course, in the city, you may get house sparrows as well, or English sparrows, which you don't particularly want. But we don't have that problem here. And I keep the hole small enough that we don't have to worry about the starlings.
Right.
And then the other exciting one that we had this year was not a bird at all, but we had flying squirrels staying in 2 of the birdhouses over the winter. They packed it absolutely full of shavings and cedar, and grass, and that's where they spent the winter.
Wow. Yeah. Now, were you able to actually open up and have a peek at them?
I did.
Wow.
I did, yeah.
That's amazing.
Usually we see a mouse nest or something after the winter, but the squirrels were actually there. My wife actually got a picture of one peeking out, and so it was quite. But they since vacated the house.
Right.
They no longer are in them for the summer.
Wow. It would be interesting to see if they come back.
It would be. It would be.
It really would be.
Time will tell. Yeah. That's the first year in the whole time we've been here that we've had the flying squirrels.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's special. It really is, because you must have the ideal spot here for them to be here.
Well, the trees are getting bigger, so I guess they feel more comfortable moving around throughout the farm.
Wow. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for allowing us to be here. The photographs that you're going to see throughout the interview are from your wife, Renee. She does absolutely amazing photography. And we're going to go to another spot because, as I said, location, location, location. We are going to look at some different species that are along the Sydenham River.
The story when the RCAF said Mach 2 fighter, 2-place 1,000-mile range, the British said it was impossible. The Yanks tried twice and failed. They said, you're dreaming. We said, fine, we'll build it right here in Toronto. And now you guys, my guys, are saying that it can't be done, that they were right?
Now that's the rocket that we used to get the model up to speed, and then the onboard sensors tell us that...
Come on, baby.
Damn it! But we did it according to your specs. The specs have changed.
We did it.
Arrow 201. You're cleared for takeoff.
We did it!
Although the government canceled the project and destroyed the prototypes, the Avro Arrow remains for Canada a world benchmark in aerospace achievement.
Hi, I'm David Sherman, host of Politically Speaking. Join me for my next show, where my guest will be Warden Paul McQueen of Grey County. Politically Speaking on Rogers TV.
Welcome back. We've changed our location. We are now along the Sydenham River, and we've stopped in and talked to Norah Toth. So thank you for letting us stop in, Norah.
I'm glad to have you.
Yeah. We were talking with Dave Anderson a little while ago, and he was talking about the number of birds, which really blows my mind that he's kept track of the number of birds that have went through. By any chance, do you know how many birds have been through your backyard?
Well, I live in downtown Owen Sound, so probably our birds are different, but
Yes.
I've had 54 species this year, which is,
Wow.
for me, that's very good, because normally I'm not home in the spring.
That's right, and we were talking about
Yeah.
the COVID lockdown really put us all in a different position, and we were staying at home and counting our birds.
That's right. Well,
Yeah.
I usually count my birds anyway, but I count them in the winter. There's a program called Project Feeder Watch. It's a citizen science project, and I do that just to try and keep myself active in the winter and watch the birds at my feeders. That's some of what I've done, but this year one of the organizations I belong to provided a little challenge, and they said, well, Project Feeder Watch ends in April, let's continue it.
Oh, interesting.
So I continued it for an additional month because June wasn't going to work for me. And I think that's why I saw so many birds, because usually I'm away in May.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and you're away in May because of?
Oh, because I go birding, and I have a birding festival, the
Yes.
Huron Fringe Birding Festival, that I'm quite involved with.
Yes, and the birding festival really, it was very sad on what happened with the birding festival this year because you had to cancel it.
We had to cancel because of COVID.
Because of COVID.
So we've started meeting again as a committee with social distancing.
Yep.
And what we're trying to do is figure out what we can do next year as a festival, depending on where we are in this COVID progression of things.
Exactly, because we're not going to know whether, like, we're up to, I think now 50 people per group type thing, but we don't know if there's going to be that second
That's right.
curve that's going to hit us, but definitely you've always had some interesting seminars and speakers and outings. I was privileged to be at one of those a couple years ago, and I was in awe of what photographers are carrying with them. The lenses were massive.
They are.
My eyes opened up. It sure beat my little Canon camera that I was
Or
holding.
my iPhone, yes.
Or iPhone, yes. Yeah, simply amazing. But Mcgregor is an absolute gem of a place for birds that are migrating back in the spring, because it seems to be a stop point
It
along
is
the
a
shore.
stopover along the Lake Huron shoreline. Mcgregor Point Provincial Park is a wonderful location. We plan our birding festival around the park, and then we plan it to include some of the areas on the Bruce Peninsula and as far over as Meaford.
Wow.
Or close to Meaford. So we cover a large area to try and provide some diversity, because what we do is we have offered, I don't know what we're offering next year, but we have offered 90 activities over the last several years.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of registration.
Oh, it is. And we have a wonderful registrar.
Oh, wonderful. She needs a pat on the back. Or
she does.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she does.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, talking about being along Lake Huron, you're also involved with the piping plovers.
I am involved with piping plovers.
Yes, and that's just an amazing thing that's happened, and the story that goes along with that as well. Except this year, things have changed quite a bit.
This year, things were quite different. Because of COVID-19, the beach was closed. And the beach was closed until early in June the 9th, I think, or June the 10th. And it wasn't until then that Birds Canada was able to get on the beach. And they are the ones that have the lead for all of the more of the scientific aspect of the piping plover program in Ontario. And they found a nest.
Oh, wow.
They found a nest with 4 little eggs, perfect nest.
Yep.
And no adults.
No way. So
No adults. So
Really?
we're assuming that one of the adults was predated. And because we weren't allowed, or nobody was allowed on the beach earlier, we have no idea what birds were there.
Oh.
So all the piping flowers on the Great Lakes are banded. And so they have a unique band, and so you know who's who.
Who's who? Yeah.
And we've known who's who at the beach for quite a few years.
So do those beach dwellers of the plovers, do they always come back to the same beach? They come back to their birthplace?
No, they don't come back to their birthplace necessarily, but they do come back to a beach. And some of the Great Lakes piping plovers use beaches along Lake Michigan. They use some in Lake Superior. They've expanded now to some sites in Lake Ontario, but high water has been a huge issue for them in throughout the whole Great Lakes this year.
Wow, amazing.
So I don't know the final statistics as to how many birds were fledged. I think there are 8 in Ontario, and they were fledged from Wasaga Beach and Darlington Provincial Parks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But it's great to have the stats. You know, the volunteer base that you've got. You wouldn't know all this information unless you had all these volunteers to help bring it together.
Yeah. And there are volunteers throughout Ontario and throughout the northern states that monitor nesting sites.
Now that would be a really cool Zoom meeting if you could have all your volunteers together. There'd be a lot of stories that would
There would be some good stories, and there's some fascinating stories.
Yeah.
I don't know whether we want to talk about stories.
Yeah, we don't have enough time. Yeah, but to bring you back here to home. What are some of the unique things that you see here on the Sydenham River compared to when I was at Dave's, being at a farmland open area? He has a little bit of protection, which brings in some specific birds to his feeders. But here is different because you're on the water.
We are. We when I take a chance or take an opportunity to look at the river, there's not a lot of variety on our river, but there are some. So in the spring, we had a mallard family. We didn't see any chicks or ducklings after a few days, so they may have met their demise somehow. We have had several geese families, or families of geese down there this year. We have cormorants that come through and they stage here in the spring, and then I'm not too sure where they go.
Oh, really?
And then they'll come back in the fall.
So you don't see them nesting here in the trees?
They aren't nesting here in the trees.
Wow.
And
do you have any kingfishers or anything?
We have a pair of kingfishers.
You do, okay.
And I saw them doing the dirty deed. So that's a whole other aspect of. Next year they're going to be doing a breeding bird atlas, and so the breeding bird atlas that would be a good clue as to whether kingfisher are breeding on the Sydenham River.
It would be
in downtown.
Yeah.
So we have kingfishers down there. We've had eastern phoebe. We've had quite a few different species of warblers in the spring.
Right.
That I'm not seeing now.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, do you put out anything special to feed compared to what Dave puts out? Sunflowers and the oranges and stuff for Orioles. It typically would be the same for this area as where we were?
I think feeding would be much the same. I think it's probably a preference as to who you are and what you want to spend or what you want to use. I tend to use mixed seed at this time of year. Whether that's good or bad, I'm not sure, because what it does do is it attracts a lot more pigeons than what I would have otherwise.
Pigeons, yes, I forgot. Owensound has pigeons. I don't have pigeons at my house, but yeah, that would be
we have flocks.
Yeah, so yeah, you would have to be very careful on what you wished for. I probably feeding in Owensound in case.
Yes, I tend to feed for a few days, and then if my pigeon population gets over about a dozen, which is quite a few, I will stop feeding. And I'll stop feeding for a little while until they've decided that they're not going to get any freebies here, and then I start again.
And you'll move on.
It takes about a day for them to figure it out.
But that's not bad, though. Like,
no.
It's because other birds, they'll probably have a circuit of feeders that they go to, so it's not as if you're the only supply feeder.
And pigeons are more of an opportunist, and I don't think they're tied to a certain type of food. They're maybe more omnivorous. So they would be quite easy to look after themselves elsewhere.
Yeah.
I don't get rid of my nut feeder, though. I have peanuts all the time. And the chickadees love that. This year.
Really?
Oh, yes.
See, now I've always been hesitant on putting nuts out because I don't want squirrels. Sorry, but I don't like squirrels at my house or chipmunks because of the damage they do at my barn. So my philosophy is a lot different than what other people maybe in town adore chipmunks coming to their feeder. I don't know.
I love chipmunks, but they're not. You have a concern about your barn. We have an older style house with a stone foundation, and chipmunks get in.
They do.
So I would prefer not having too many chipmunks.
Yeah.
But the nut feeder is high enough, and this year it's been fun because I've been able to say I have a pair with 4 young.
Oh,
and
wow.
I've been watching them as these little guys have come around the feeder and are now pretty independent. So that doesn't take long.
Fabulous. Oh my gosh. Now you had mentioned just before our interview that you had some publications or some handout information that you wanted to.
Well, I wanted people to know that bird watching is a really easy hobby. It's a hobby that people can do whether they have a lot of money or want to spend a lot of money, whether they don't have very much. Usually a pair of binoculars is what you need.
Yes.
Some people don't have binoculars. Some people have lower end. Some people have much more expensive than mine. So you can adjust your hobby as however you would like to, and it's good for your brain.
Yes.
It's. I keep thinking that the older I get, the more opportunity there is to. I learn bird songs. I'm learning identification. Some birds are different as a juvenile than they are as an adult. So you have to learn their different plumages, and so it keeps your brain really active.
Oh, it does. And I have to say that my bird book at home it's all color coded. So if I see an orange bird, I look up under the orange section in my bird book.
That's a different style.
So it's very handy. So just quickly, where can people get more information about the Birding
Huron Fringe
Festival?
Birding Festival.
Yes.
Well, if they want to look on the internet, HuronFringeBirdingFestival.ca is our website, or you can look under the friendsofmcgregor.org. And there we have all our information. It'll show you what our program was to be in 2020.
Yes.
And when we do have our program available, probably in January of next year, we will have our program up.
Great.
For registration, usually the beginning of March.
That's marvelous.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Norah.
Okay.
We'll see you again next time. Bye.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Hi, I'm Sharon Skelly, host of Community Close-Up. Please watch us every week here on Rogers TV.
Think it's okay to drive high? Think again. Drug-impaired driving is as illegal as drunk driving, and in Ontario, the penalties are the same. If police suspect you're driving under the influence